large together that's duty-bound to listen to me. At least they're going to pretend to be polite enough to listen to me. And I wanted to take this opportunity to do some, what I call mini trainings or mini lectures. And this one is on strategic thinking. And it came to me, if any of you go into my office, you will not recognize it because I think I hauled out about 2 tons of paper. And in that paper that I got rid of, I imagine there were about 40 strategic plans that various people have given me over the years to say, you know, read my strategic plan and tell me what you think. And I'll tell you, I'm not a big fan of the plan itself. I think strategic planning needs to be done, but it's the process that's important. But what I'm really intrigued with, though, is the whole concept of strategic thinking. There was an article a couple years ago, well, I say a couple years ago, which means it was probably 20 years ago, in the Harvard Business Review by a guy named Mintzberg that's called The Death of Strategic Planning, and he talks about the need to think. And there are a couple components to strategic thinking. One of the components is the ability to think in time. And the best way to describe this is when Wayne Gretzky was asked why he was such a great hockey player. It's because he said, I don't skate to where the puck is, I skate to where the puck's going to be. And I want to just give a shout out to somebody. The best thinker in time I ever met was the woman that started Maryland Nonprofits, which was a woman named Sandy Skolnick. She was one of the founding board members. And Sandy's the one that taught me, you can't think in what's happening in this General Assembly session or what's even going to happen in the next General Assembly session. You got to think 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, 15 years down the road. So you got to be able to think in time. You also have to see the whole field. You know, you got to know what's going on. And in for-profit business, they talk about knowing the supply chain, which is, if you're manufacturing mufflers, you got to know about the steel industry because that's where you get your raw materials from. And you got to think about the automobile industry because that's where the mufflers are used. In nonprofits, it's far more complicated. So I don't talk about the supply chain in nonprofits. I talk about the chain link fence that we're part of because we're all linked together, and it's so important that we know how all of us are connected. But there are 5 characteristics of strategic thinking, and if you'd like me to do it, I'd be happy to give somebody the hour-and-a-half lecture, but I'm not going to do that right now. And then talk about one characteristic, which is called different things, but what it's slack. They call it different things. They call it being opportunistic. I call it slack. And there's an economic, and you know, and if I had the right technology, there'd be a picture of Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure up here because they're slackers. And everybody thinks being a slacker is bad, but in economic terms, it's really quite good because if you have a factory and it has 100% capacity, you actually do better if you plan at 95%. Because you need the slack for 2 reasons. One, to deal with problems, so that if the line breaks, you got time to fix the problem. And you also need the slack so if something really great comes along, you can take advantage of it. Nonprofits hate slack. Okay, I know your calendar, Margaret. It starts at 8 o'clock in the morning and goes 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, you know, 1, 2, 3. And all of you, Ken, I know your calendar too. The problem is you plan your calendars that way and 95 gets backed up. You're 10 minutes late for the first appointment and the whole day is just a mess because you're late, you're late, you're late, you're late, you're late. And if you just have a little slack, a little slack, you can deal with it. The other problem is it's really things on the table because we don't have enough time to do them. And we don't plan slack with ourselves. We don't plan slack with our staff. You know, for some reason we have to plan our staff 110% capacity. We plan our dollars 125% of capacity. There's never enough time to take advantage of things. So my problem is, and I'm a great believer in slack, and unfortunately I haven't done a very good job of giving myself slack lately. So that's kind of why I'm making this change right now, is because I need some slack in my life. And the reason is, and I got to tell you what I'm going to be thinking about, because these are two things that have kind of been going around in my brain lately. So this is what I'm going to be using my slack for. Number one, we have to find a way to let nonprofits close down and make everybody feel like a hero doing it. Okay, because some nonprofits have outlived, I hate to say it, have outlived their usefulness. You know, they brought the problem to the attention. It's time for them to go. But there's such a feeling of failure. How do we convince them they're like British television, where you only do 12 episodes and then they go away? You know, so I want to work on that. The other thing I want to work on with my slack is, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I've got such a, I am so ticked off at the financial gurus that are on the mass media, like Susie Orman. She has really irritated me because she's telling everybody, don't give to charity. Cut your charitable contributions as a way to cut your expenses. And she's saying, cut dollars, you can always volunteer. Now, I love it. Volunteerism is fine, but I've worked for a nonprofit long enough to tell you that volunteer hours do not pay for the insurance we buy from Rob, do not pay for the rent that we have to do, and no matter what volunteers can do, there's just a lot of things they can do. How do we get people to understand that making a contribution is not an expense, but it's an investment? You know, that people need to make those contributions first, you know, before they do other things, because they need to invest in kids, they need to, and it may be animals, maybe they're investing in animals, investing in the earth, but it's an investment for the future. So this is how I'm going to use my slack in the upcoming years. And I wish I had my slide up here, because then it would be Nancy who's part of the amazing adventure.